On Saturday, the ANC will be celebrating its 110th birthday. With the curfew cancelled and outdoor gatherings of up to 2,000 people allowed, it looks like all roads lead to Limpopo in what could be Ramaphosa's final January 8th speech ahead of the elective conference later this year. President Cyril Ramaphosa has yet to announce whether he'll be running for a second term. Ramaphosa's election at Nasrec was the beginning of an experiment that the party hoped would put an end to slate politics in the party. Despite their protests and objections, it's safe to say that the experiment has failed. Factionalism within the party, coupled with rampant corruption, has made Ramaphosa's presidency a difficult one. To examine this, we are joined by political analyst Hlengiwe Ndlovu. Thank you so much for your time. Hlengiwe, we do appreciate it. Let's just speak about what the expectations are for January 8th. We do know it's next Saturday, but if we're really honest, the last 10 to 5 years hasn't been all that rosy for the ANC.
Thank you, Haiti. I think following the last soundbite, we are not expecting much to change from what we've seen over the years. Of course, there is a whole lot of things that have happened in the past 2 years, especially with the COVID pandemic and, all the scandals that have kind of like, shadowed that period, but also the local government elections where the ANC needs to reflect very, very deeply in terms of the dwindling support of the ANC and losing particularly the big metros. So the message, I believe it will be the same, but it will just factor in a few things that have kind of, touch on the recent events, touch on the pandemic, and touch on maybe the appeal to the general public to restore trust to the ruling party, which is the ANC.
I want us to touch on the lack of unity within the ANC, and I think many would also speak to the big issue that is seen with Ace Magashule and how there's clearly a faction within the ANC. Before you answer, I want us to listen to a soundbite from January 8th, 2018 from President Cyril Ramaphosa about how the party is unified and it's a renewed ANC. Let's listen in quickly.
Those doomsayers who felt or thought that we would emerge out of that conference divided, that we will fight at the conference, that the conference will collapse, are holding their heads in shame today. The ANC has emerged united, more united than we were when we went to conference. We have emerged stronger than we were when we went to conference. And we see it as we go through the length and the breadth of the country, comrades. Uguti, ifikile imvuselelo. The ANC is renewed. The ANC is back with a bang. We went to the conference contesting various positions. But the winner after that contest is not any individual. It's not a group of individuals. It's not a particular grouping or any other grouping. The winner of that contest is none other than the African National Congress. We have emerged with a unified leadership.
Let's also bring in Dumisani Tembe, a political analyst as well. Dumisani, just to bring you into the loop of what that soundbite spoke about, it was from President Cyril Ramaphosa on January 8th 2018, where he says the ANC has emerged united and doomsayers will be hanging their heads in shame because the party is a renewed party. What is your sense of the ruling party moving into January 8th next Saturday? Is it a united party?
No, not necessarily. Good evening to yourself and the viewers too. Look, I don't think the ANC has been any different from the last 4 to 5 or 6 or 10 years for that matter. There hasn't been any sense of renewal. There hasn't been any sense of revival. And from my observation, I think 2021 as the year that has just passed, it has only been business as usual, despite the crisis that the ANC and the country has gone through. And I think in the year 2022, it will also be the same. It will also be business as usual, both within the ANC as an organization, but at the same time, also the ANC as the ruling party. Because I don't think at this point in time or in the last 10 years, the ANC has demonstrated the ability to revive itself, to regenerate itself, to reposition itself. And I don't think there's enough evidence to showcase that the ANC will behave any differently in the year 2022 at 2 levels. As a ruling party at an organizational level, but similarly as a leader, as a ruling party. So it's going to be business as usual.
Hlengiwe, listening to that soundbite from President Cyril Ramaphosa 4 years ago saying that the ANC is united, and looking at what's happening at the moment within the ANC, what would you say would be the message this time around, given the fact that you can see there is a lack of unity within the ruling party?
Yes, in terms of that message, so we can go back as far as Polokwane, as far as Mangaung, and as far as Nasrec. And I think it has been following the same trend over these different periods. So that's counting back 5 up to 15 years, and then we're coming to a 20-year period now. And we've been observing almost a similar trend of the ANC coming from each conference divided more than they went into the conference. And the message in particular, the president that you just played, I think it's an appeal to the general public to try and see things differently, because for what we know is from Nasrec, they came as divided as ever. And watching at that conference unfolding, from my own point of view, I analyzed the situation as the compromised leadership, because for me, that moment was a moment of compromise. They needed to compromise something in order to emerge from Nasrec carrying something. And looking at the events that have been happening, the Ace Matashula case, and looking at the Jacob Zuma and his supporters, what has been happening, the lootings and all of that, it's a reflection of the broader politics within the ANC in itself and the factions that exist within the ANC. So going to Mangaung this coming weekend, we are yet to see if there will be any change, but I don't think from where we are sitting right now, there is any hope for any change. I think the ANC needs to take a step back and reflect. And I don't know what reflections can happen at this point if they haven't learned from conference after conference. It would seem like they've been getting worse instead of getting better. So we are yet to watch what is going to happen there. But we are hoping that they'll be able to introspect and reflect from within that movement.
Many would argue, how much time do they actually need to introspect? Dumisani, let me bring you in around the issue of land expropriation. And we do understand that the party has been punting land reform, but it has failed. Are we expecting the ANC to say anything different on the matter? Will they side with the EFF on how they move forward as a party, especially around land expropriation without compensation? What actually happens now? Should the ANC not be taking a firmer stand on this matter?
The first thing, I don't think the ANC is in a position to take a firm stand on the land expropriation with that compensation, because the ANC is at weakest moment when it comes to its power base. In this case, the electoral power base. So if the ANC was to come up and speak strongly on issues of land expropriation without compensation, it will not necessarily be genuine. It will be more of a propaganda than a serious commitment to expropriate land without compensation. In 2004, if I'm not mistaken, the ANC got a 2/3 majority, and it did not use this electoral power base to drive a stronger, position on land expropriation without compensation. So it will be very disingenuous. It will be very, it wouldn't be truthful for the ANC to speak strongly again on land expropriation without compensation at the moment when it is very weak. It will be more of a propaganda, a make-believe, rather than an honest commitment. So it's not in a position. If the ANC speaks strongly on land expropriation without compensation,
and a very important one, it has never been at the core of the ANC's policies in its genuine form. So if ever they are going to be addressing it, from where I'm standing, it would look like it's a window dressing type of thing, a desperate attempt to try and win voters' empathy.
Sure, and I want us to go back to the issue of the lack of unity within the ANC. But before we get to this, I want to speak about the fact that I think it's the first time in the ANC history that a Secretary General has been suspended and has been basically asked to step aside. I want us to listen to a soundbite from ANC suspended Secretary General Ace Magashule around the issue of the ANC having asked him to step aside.
How many people were charged with corruption before NASREC? And only when I'm charged, and I'm telling you these are fabricated flimsy charges, the step aside rule is actually applied. Many people, comrades in parliament, comrades in structures, wanted to join this case. And I said to comrades, you know what, don't join this case because it's going to make as if I am mobilizing people. I've discouraged a lot of them, including Bongo and the rest, that maybe you don't need to go to court, comrades, because the ANC is facing challenges.
Hlengiwe Dumisani, I want us to touch on what Ace Magashule said in that soundbite. And to me, and I think to many South Africans, this is not just about the factions that we see that exist between President Cyril Ramaphosa and Ace Magashule, but there's a deeper issue within the ANC, and there seems to be a serious lack of unity. What would you say, Hlengiwe, about this?
Well, there has always been divisions within the ANC, but as I touched on this issue on my previous comment to reflect on the NASREC moment, so I was there seated at the front row when the top six was announced, and I guess everyone wondered how is it possible for Ace Magashule to work with President Cyril Ramaphosa. And I think it came as a shock to the majority of South Africans, because there were already clear divisions in terms of their factions, but them then trying to force things to work together. And then if you were following closely Makajule's court cases, and also for those who attended the former President Zuma's cases, you would already see that even the speakers who were coming to the podium to address different people who were there outside, you could already tell that there is a deeper crisis within the ANC, and it would seem like it's factions within factions, and it is more. This is more visible for me, especially where I do my own work within local government, where you find in one metro you have like more than 3 factions, more than 4 factions, and you can clearly see that these factions are feeding into the broader national political factions that exist, and this becomes very difficult to unite a party that has so many divisions. And if you think of unity within the ANC and looking at how divided they are at this particular point, and looking at the elections that are coming very soon, it's kind of like very, I don't want to use the word disturbing, but I don't know from where they are standing, the ANC. One can only wonder what will be the turnaround strategy for them to come back to the playing ground, so that when they go to the elective conference by the end of the year, they would have sort of like, worked around these differences, and we can only imagine what's going to happen when they come back.
Well, we hope that they would work around these differences. Dumisani, maybe your stance on the fact that there is an elective conference coming up, and you have a suspended Secretary General Ace Magashule, that it's very clear as day which parts or which faction he is part of. How are they going to navigate through this? Because you have President Cyril Ramaphosa saying that the ANC has emerged unified, and it's a renewed ANC, but then you have a suspended SG, and there's clearly a strong faction growing here.
No, that's true. Look, I think the unfortunate part is the assumption that the ANC is united. I don't think the ANC is united. The ANC is led by a principle that says it depends on the dominant faction and not necessarily on the principles and the constitution that governs the ANC. Because what the ANC needs for it to be unified, it needs what is called the political cohesion at the leadership level, and secondly, it needs what is called the political discipline. Without a strong political discipline and cohesion at the top level of the ANC, it will be difficult to unite each and every other person. But at this point in time, I think President Cyril Ramaphosa has inherited an organization which is governed by the rule of the dominant faction rather than the unity of the organization. So even as they go to Polokwane, when they go to this January 8th statement, it will be the same approach wherein the dominant faction will try to flex its muscle and try to ascertain what is the internal opposition within the ANC. So from where I'm sitting, I'm not convinced that at this point in time, the ANC is united, number one, and that it can unite itself. But from all that I see, it's an organization which is governed by the powerful faction at that point in time. But maybe that is not necessarily bad. What is bad within the ANC is when we have two different factions that are relatively at the same level of strength. So perhaps what the ANC needs moving forward is a very powerful faction that can exert its authority within the organization rather than, a faction that is not comfortable with its own position. But that is not unity. What the ANC needs in its internal affairs is the ability of having one faction that exerts its authority in driving the principles and the resolutions of the ANC.
Okay, great. I think we'll go to a short break, and after the break we will still be with Hlengiwe Ndlovu and Dumisani Tembe. We'll speak about the unemployment crisis in the country and the ANC's struggle when it comes to their finances.